I parked a few rows down and about a dozen spaces from my wife's car, with an open view of the entrance to the Happy Life yoga studio. I watched as she walked inside, wearing tight pink leggings from Lululemon and a matching crop top that looked more like a sports bra than regular clothing. She was bouncing happily, without any bags in her hands, although she had just put clothes and a bottle of water in the trunk, which, apparently, she never needed. I waited. We didn't have to wait long. About 5 minutes after she came in, Jude, my wife of 22 years, came out again. But not alone. He was with her. Marcel Bufil, a self-proclaimed yogi and head of the Happy Life studio, walked arm in arm with my dear wife. I hated him. I hated it from the first second I saw it. Although perhaps I hated him even earlier simply because I was forced to constantly listen to enthusiastic tirades from Jude about how wonderful he was. Jude held his hand with both palms and leaned her head on his shoulder. Even from this distance, I could see their smiles as they approached her car. He sat in the passenger seat and Jude sat behind the wheel. I watched as she started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward the highway. I let them drive away a little so they wouldn't notice that I was following, and then I moved after them. I didn't have to keep them in sight. The GPS tracker gave me constant and accurate updates on their location. I was disappointed but not surprised when Jude pulled into the Marriott parking lot. Well, at least if she decided to cheat on me, she didn't choose a cheap motel. They parked and got out of the car, then hugged briefly. Marcel tried to kiss my wife, but she turned away and his lips touched her cheek. Jude looked worried. I'm sure she blushed. Marcel held her hand and led her to the hotel entrance, but Jude reluctantly followed him. She seemed to be pushing him away, thinking, did she doubt it? They stood nearby, animatedly discussing something. When Jude was nervous, she always made active gestures with her hands. I haven't seen her like this since she had to speak at the TA meeting in April. She gestured to the right, Marcel nodded, and these two potential lovebirds entered not the hotel, but the restaurant attached to it. I waited a few minutes for them to settle in and then entered the hotel lobby. I looked around, taking a closer look at all the entrances and exits, saw where people were working, and memorized the location of the CCTV cameras. I walked down the hallway on the right side of the lobby, past the convenience store and business center. When I reached the end of the corridor and the entrance to the restaurant, I hesitated a little. The door was open, and next to it stood a small, unattended hostess stand. Considering it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the place seemed pretty empty, so I didn't expect to see anyone manning the counter. There was a small sign taped to the front of the counter that said, "Seat yourself." I carefully looked around the doorway for signs. Nothing special caught my eye. By law, if an establishment received at least 51% of its income from the sale of alcohol, then it was required to hang a corresponding sign at all entrances. There was no such thing here. My hand habitually touched a hard metal object hidden under my sports jacket. I looked around the hall. The elderly man was sipping a cup of coffee and reading the sports page of the newspaper. A young couple with a baby dined on hamburgers at the next table. Like I said, the place was practically empty. When I reached the middle of the room, a waitress came out from somewhere behind the swinging doors leading to the kitchen. She wiped her hands on her apron and came up to me. "Hello, alone?" she asked with a fake smile. "Actually," I replied, "I'm meeting friends for a couple of drinks." I nodded towards the small lounge area near the bar. The waitress nodded and went to check if any of the customers needed anything. I slowly walked up to the bar and saw them huddled together in a booth, their backs to me. I slowly approached their table. As I got closer, I began to hear snippets of their conversation. "You do," Marcel said in his fake French accent. "You know, your husband has nothing like that." Jude sat closer to the wall, pressed against Marcel. He put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned on him. "I don't know if I'm ready." "Ready for what?" I asked, sitting down next to Marcel and pushing him aside to make room for myself, thereby pushing them both into the corner of the booth. "Hey, what the hell?" Marcel blurted out, quickly turning around to see who had intruded on his date. I found it funny that he lost his accent in his excitement. When he saw me, the blood drained from his face and his eyes widened. Jude pulled her hand away from his and covered her mouth, letting out a small cry. "Bill," she exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" She seemed to realize her awkward situation and added, "It's not what you thought." I laughed. "I was wondering if you would say that." "Very funny, Jude, very funny. Unfortunately, I understand perfectly well what is happening." There were two plastic room keys on the table. One is in front of Marcel, and the other, still in the folder with the Marriott Hotel logo, is in front of my wife. I reached across Marcel and grabbed the key. "Number 405, I read aloud. "There wasn't enough space in the studio, and you decided to hold the class in the hotel. I need to leave," Marcel said, trying to push me out of the booth. "Sit down and shut up," I replied, sitting him back down when he tried to get up. "And don't make a scene." "Bill, it's not as bad as it seems, I swear," Jude desperately tried to assure me. "I didn't cheat on you." I took the second key lying in front of Marcel and picked both up, looking at her in bewilderment. "You forgot the word bye, Jude. You haven't cheated on me yet. I haven't changed. We didn't do anything." She began to justify herself, stammering. Forgive me, Bill. I lost my head. I didn't understand what I was doing." "I need to leave," Marcel repeated, this time in a Texas accent. "Sit down and shut up, asshole," I growled, barely containing my anger. "And you, Jude, what did you do?" "Right, Marcel. I don't want to get involved in this," he muttered fearfully. He seemed ready to cry. "This is between you two. Let me go. I don't want problems." I chuckled again. "It's too late not to interfere, Marcel. You didn't mind interfering with my wife until I found out about it. How many more married women have you attracted from your studio?" "I don't understand what you're talking about," he tried to feign innocence. "He's not like that, Bill," my devoted wife said passionately, coming to the defense of her boyfriend. "Marcel is just a wonderful teacher. You got it all wrong." I shook my head. I even felt a little sorry for my wife. Almost. "Oh, Jude, did you think he treats you special? Did you really believe that you were the only one he was trying to seduce?" Jude's face darkened, and she looked at me darkly. "Of course not," she said, as if making excuses. "I don't think I'm special to him. He's just my yoga instructor." "Just your yoga instructor?" I asked, trying not to laugh. "What were you doing when I approached?" I don't think Jude could have blushed any more. Her posture expressed complete defeat. She knew that I had revealed her. "He lied to you, Jude. He slept with at least half the married women in your class. This teacher preys exclusively on those who are married. He was just manipulating you." "I don't believe you," she whispered. "Is it true? I warned you what your infatuation with him would lead to. Didn't I say that one day he will show his cards and ask you to sleep with him?" "Yes, but it wasn't like that," she responded sharply. "I didn't mean to cheat on you." "But you came here to sleep with him," I chuckled. "How were you going to do this without cheating on me? We're still married, at least for now." "He said that sex with him would help improve our relationship," she said, trying to find an excuse. "It was another type of yoga, and he was going to teach me the techniques so I could use them with you." Judging by the expression on her face, she herself did not believe her words. I shook my head, barely holding back a grin. "I also told you that he will do everything to convince you that this is not cheating." She nodded, close to tears. "You said so," she admitted. "Listen, man," Marcel began, without a trace of a French accent, his voice trembling with fear. "Take your stupid bitch. I'm tired of her whining. I tried to get Jude to do this for months, but every time I thought she was ready, she backed down. Just let me go, please. I'll leave her alone, honestly." Marcel's words hit Jude hard. She looked up at me, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Forgive me, Bill. I was a fool. I didn't believe you. I swear I never meant to hurt you." "Yes, but you did it," I told her. "The worst thing is that all this time I knew that this bastard was messing with you, and I tried to make you understand it. But you bought his lies. She lowered her head and cried. "If you don't let me go immediately, I'll call the police," Marcel said, interrupting me, suddenly trying to feign confidence. "You don't understand, do you, Marcel?" I said, grinning with the same impudence with which he usually looked at me. I threw back the tails of my jacket, and his gaze fell on the badge and weapon. I think I smelled fear. "I am the police. My wife, Jude, and I recently celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. At that time, one of our children was already in college, and the other was about to graduate from high school. I was thinking about retiring, and Jude was bored. She had been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years, and with her children nearly grown, she was looking for something to keep her busy. At that time, we should have been thinking about a future together, but it turned out that the whole focus was on Jude. It was then that she first became interested in yoga. Her best friend Melissa went to the studio, located in a small shopping center not far from our house, and during every conversation she never tired of admiring her. I'll admit, Melissa did look happy and in better shape than I've ever seen her. So when Jude told me she wanted to start going to classes with Melissa, I was all for it, or at least not against it anyway. Anything that would make her happy, I supported. Well, within reason, of course. I remember how excited she was after the first lesson. She returned home inspired and couldn't stop talking about it. I listened to her patiently, but had difficulty understanding half of what she said. She enjoyed the physical challenge, but was even more intrigued by the spiritual aspects of yoga and the philosophy of yogis. To me, it sounded like complete nonsense, but I have never been a free thinker. On top of that, she said, the instructor was a handsome Frenchman named Marcel. On Friday morning, at breakfast, she started talking about him again. This was unusual, and an unpleasant feeling began to arise in me. Should I be worried? I asked her from across the kitchen table. About yoga, Marcel? She asked, not realizing how ridiculous it sounded. I couldn't help but grin. Yoga, is he smarter than the average bear? I answered, confident that I would earn myself points with my wit. Eh, bear? Irritation froze on her face until she understood my joke. Oh yes, Yogi Bear. It's funny. He is a master of yoga, so he is called a yogi. It's a respectful title, you know. Yes, I know what a title is, I replied, and then, trying to imitate a Yogi Bear accent, I added, whatever you say, boo-boo. She rolled her eyes and shook her head. I decided I'd had enough of the Yogi Bear jokes and moved on to the only other yogi I knew. You know, I said with a grin, when you're in class, you can notice a lot just by watching. Jude didn't seem to understand the reference, but nodded. Well, Yoga Marcel wants everyone to try their best, so no one just stands around and watches. You should come sometime. Maybe you'll like it. There was no chance of that happening, and I think she knew that even before she suggested it. Yoga was not something I ever expected to want, at least not in this life. I got my physical training in the gym and my share of pseudo-spiritual philosophy in Aikido classes. Well, make sure you don't give up during class, because as they say, I said, trying not to laugh and pausing for effect. Jude looked at me, not understanding what kind of they were that were saying something. They say that it's not over yet. Jude narrowed her eyes. Wait a minute, she asked suspiciously. Are you quoting Yogi Berra? Yogi Berra, I corrected her. He was also a great spirit seer. Ha ha ha, my wife replied sarcastically. Do you ever take anything I do seriously? This is important to me. Sorry, honey, you're right, I said sincerely. But you didn't answer my question. What question? She asked, getting up from the table to pour us more coffee. I couldn't believe that she didn't understand what issue I was talking about. I'm having déjà vu, I chuckled, then repeated my question in a serious tone. Should I be worried? If you're going to belittle what's important to me, then yes, you should, she said, placing her hand on her hip, and then added, but you don't need to worry about Yoga Marcel. He's not my type. I chuckled. What kind of taste is this? She replied, raising her eyebrows and emphasizing each point in comparison. Well, he's young. He's handsome. He is very athletic, fit, and flexible. From what I can tell, he has amazing stamina. He is smart and does not criticize my interests. And his package looks huge in tights. Oh, that is, he's not at all like me, I said, laughing. He's as different from you as possible, she replied, sighing and sitting down to drink coffee again, placing my mug next to me. She had a dreamy, detached look. He must be gay, I muttered. You think that all handsome men are gay, Jude replied. This is not true. How can you make such an implausible and callous accusation? I only say this about the beautiful ones, well-dressed and with perfect teeth that you always admire. And besides, I'm always right. Name one time when I was wrong. That actor from the movie about the love letter, I forgot his name, she said, pretending not to remember. I knew she knew his name. He was on her celebrity list, right after Brad Pitt. It's still in the closet, I said confidently. Wait a little, you will hear soon. There will be some scandal, and he will admit his passion. He's married. His wife is a cover. You're just jealous of all the hot, young, athletic men. You hate that you are getting old and project it onto others. Am I projecting? Is this one of those words they teach in Psychology 101? She replied, pursing her lips. I failed psychology, I lied. I actually had a double major in criminology and psychology, and I had a master's degree. Several years ago, I was one of the lead detectives who caught a North Dallas criminal. This brought me national fame and allowed me to write a book called The Pathology of the Serial Prejudice, which was a semi-bestseller for a while and was even made into a Lifetime movie. Right now, you're failing to apologize to me, Jude said with a grin. Apologize? Did we quarrel? I asked, playing further. If you want to make peace, I know a great way. Sex apology. It's too late, she said with an amused grin. You'll be late for work. It's a shame, by the way. After all this discussion about Ryan Gosling, I urgently need a short course. To hell with work, I said, standing up and hugging my beautiful wife. I actually want to retire, but you won't let me go. To hell with work, she replied. Better than me. We had sex. I kissed her hard on the lips. Then he straightened his trousers. Aren't you going to take a shower? Jude asked in surprise. No, I said. It's just disgusting, she said with a disdainful expression on her face. But her smile showed pride in the fact that I wanted to carry her scent with me. I'm old and nasty, I replied, using her own words. If you need a young, well-groomed, handsome man, go to your yoga class and look at your yogi. I bet it smells like patchouli. The same distant, dreamy look appeared on her face again. I walked up to her, leaned over, and kissed her deeply. I love you, Jude. But if you ever cheat on me, you know what will happen, right? I would never cheat on you, my big, hairy caveman, she said and kissed me again. Yes, well, keep thinking like that when you look at the packaging of yoga. I said goodbye and went to work. I had a big task that took a lot of time. A serial offender is back in North Dallas and Collin County. We knew of his 3 victims, and our goal was to stop him before he took on more victims or moved on to something more violent. At first, Jude only went to yoga on Wednesday and Friday afternoons when I was at work. A couple of weeks later, she added Monday mornings as well. Soon Jude was doing yoga every day. When she wasn't in class, she trained at home. Yoga began to dominate her life. She was either doing yoga or talking about it. She was absorbed in everything about this new way of life. She remodeled our home from cowboy style to bohemian chic. Our house started to look like we were living in an earthbound store. She seemed to have 2 rules when decorating. 1, use as many pillows as possible, and 2, no pillow should be similar to another or match anything else in the house. Her wardrobe has also completely changed. She began dressing in a style that was a mix of altered state and 70s Haight-Ashbury with a heavy dose of Lululemon. The house smelled of different incense, candles, and potpourri all day long. Strange crystals were appearing all over the house, even in our Brita water filter. Why we needed crystals in the water, I didn't understand. I even began to suspect that Jude was not averse to smoking with his friends when I was not at home. Jude didn't limit her enthusiasm for this new lifestyle to simply annoying me. She told her friends about everything, and several of them joined her classes. She spent her weekdays with her friends and at the yoga studio, but when it started affecting our evenings and weekends, I decided to put an end to it. Jude, why do you have to take time when we're together to do your yoga? You have the whole day free every day. I would like to spend time with my wife when I am at home and enjoy her company. I'm home more than you are, mister. I'm staying late at work again. What are you even talking about? She answered irritably. Twice this week you weren't home in the evenings when I returned, and you didn't come until 9. And now you say you're going to spend this Saturday in the studio. We're supposed to go to the lake with the Clarks this weekend. The Clarks were our neighbors and friends. Oh, I completely forgot about that, she said, as if lost in thought. I expected her to change her plans, but instead she shocked me. Can you call them and reschedule the trip for a week or two? We have an open day at our studio, and I promised Marcel that I would help. Now it's we and Marseille, I asked. When did this happen? What happened? She asked, looking at me with that look that always appeared when something irritated her. When did you stop calling him Yoga? You always called him that before. When did it become just Marseille? Jude blushed. Crap, this was not a good sign. We work quite closely with each other, and he said that I can call him Marcel when no one is around. In class, I call him Yogi, but I'm used to calling him Marcel, she quickly added. It doesn't matter. Whatever you say, boo-boo, I replied, looking at her intently. The detective in me began to emerge. I studied her carefully, trying to catch signs of lies. And anyway, you work so much overtime, she tried to change the subject. You're at home less than I am. Your business takes up all your free time. You probably shouldn't spend your weekend on any kind of entertainment at all. What she said was true, although only partially. I worked a lot of overtime, sometimes on weekends. There were 2 more attacks in the Plano and Fairview area that seemed to fit the profile of the 3 we already knew. The worst thing was that we had no leads or evidence. So will you call them? She asked. No, I won't. Then I'll call. I'm sure everything will be fine. One weekend isn't much different from the next, right? No, not like that. This weekend is the annual summer holiday. The band Bowling for Soup will play, there will be fireworks, a hot air balloon festival, and a lot of other interesting things. We agreed on this a few weeks ago, and the Clarks paid more to book the very cabin you insisted on. Why do I have to remind you of all this? Are you so engrossed in your yoga that you've completely forgotten about our marriage and our friends? Could you please not call this my yoga? That's very dismissive, she replied, ignoring everything I had just said. Okay, what do you want me to call it? Just yoga. So yoga is fine, but your yoga is offensive. That's right. I shook my head as if to say, okay, but I knew better than to voice my thoughts out loud. Instead, I decided to make my expectations clear. So you should call Marcel, I said, deliberately not calling him Yogi and telling him that you can't be at his open house. You don't work there, and you're not the owner. You are just a student. These are our best friends, and we were looking forward to this trip. You yourself were waiting for her until you changed. There will be many more open days. We're going to the lake. I didn't want to look cruel, but this was already crossing all boundaries. Jude sensed my mood and determination and eventually relented, calling Marcel later and telling him that she would not be able to attend the event. Jude clearly held a grudge against me all weekend. She was irritable and reserved. I understood that such behavior on her part was unjustified and unacceptable. I was determined to figure out why she was so fixated on this hobby. On Monday, I decided that I would start using my detective skills for more than just work. Her cold attitude was noticeable to everyone. My friend Tony immediately knew something was wrong and asked me about it. Giving up yoga, I said, and then told him everything that happened while we were drinking beer on the dock by the lake. You know, my tummy went there too, he said, but I made her quit when I met that idiot Marcel or whatever his name is. Burfil, I corrected. Marcel Bufil. Why did you force her? He's just a petty, smug little brat who acts like he's God's gift to the whole world, and especially to women. You know this guy thinks he can sleep with any woman he meets. This guy probably sleeps with half the women who go there, and probably the men too. I didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. Do you think he plays on both teams? Oh, I'm sure of that, Tony chuckled. I told Jude that he's probably gay, I laughed. And she replied that I think all handsome men are like that. Yes, all the handsome men are indeed gay, but that doesn't matter. This guy is not that handsome. Have you ever seen him? No, I haven't met yet. Brother, what are you doing anyway? You need to get Jude out of there. Nothing good will come of this. You're a cop, oh my God. Didn't you check this guy? I shrugged. No, somehow I didn't think about it. I thought it was just yoga. I trust Jude. I thought she was just interested in a new hobby. She used to be interested in ceramics, and before that, decorative painting. We now have these painted chickens all over the house. I thought it was a harmless hobby. Well, just a little interest in yoga and its teacher. Yoga? Fuck it there. And you know what? Tony leaned in, lowering his voice as if he was about to tell a secret. He is most likely not French at all. My family is from Louisiana. Everyone there speaks Creole, and I once spoke to him in patois. This devil did not understand anything. He said that my accent was too strong, and that I was pronouncing words incorrectly. It's complete bullshit. This type of Frenchie is no more than French fries. I took a sip of beer while watching the sunset. Damn it. Was I asleep all this time? Did I allow the fox to get into the chicken coop? I needed to talk to Jude, but I knew she probably wouldn't want to discuss this with me. I'll have to tread carefully. On the way back, I decided it was time to wake up and get to work on this matter properly. I came up with a plan to get closer to Jude again and learn more about her yoga hobby. We had been driving in silence for about an hour when I suddenly spoke, quietly, unexpectedly for her. I want to apologize for making you cancel the open house. I'm sorry I had to do this. I thought about this all weekend and realized that this is important to you. And I also want to thank you for going anyway, even though you didn't want to. I've missed you lately and was glad to spend time with you. Even though I acted like a bitch all weekend, she asked, acknowledging what I already thought. Even despite this, I answered, without denying her mood. She smiled and took my hand. Thank you for saying that. I had a good time too. I missed you and was glad to talk to Tony and Tammy. We should meet with them more often. Yes, I completely agree, I replied, and then took a deep breath. You know, I was thinking about how we could spend more time together. We're both busy, but I want to accept your offer. Offer? What offer? She asked. Go to yoga with you. I, of course, will not be able to attend classes as often as you, but I will probably be able to free up time for 1 or 2 classes a week. There was silence, broken only by the noise of the road. The level of her enthusiasm surprised me, to put it mildly. Do you want to go to yoga class with me? She asked more affirmatively than questioningly. With me? Yes, it would give us something to do together, and I could start sharing your passion for what brings you so much joy. If you like it so much, maybe I will like it too. After a long pause, she finally answered. You see, I take advanced classes. You'd have to start at the beginner level, so we wouldn't even be there at the same time. I don't even think classes are held on the same days. Crap. Was it true, or did Jude just not want me near her in the yoga studio? Well, then it won't work. While I was trying to determine how truthful her reaction was, another thought came to mind. You said we should hang out with the Clarks more often, right? Yes, I would like to. So why not have a party? We haven't invited friends over for a long time. Party? She asked with a hint of doubt in her voice, as if she didn't fully understand what I was offering. Yeah, you know, when people get together, drink, eat, laugh, and have a good time. You're so funny, Jude replied. I know what a party is. This is a great idea. We could invite the Clarks, a few other neighbors, your friend Melissa and her husband. What's his name? Dave. Yes, Dave. But it was Melissa who introduced you to yoga, wasn't it? Yes, faithfully. I made a mental note to talk to Dave about yoga and teacher Marcel. Then why don't you invite your friends from your yoga class to the party? We have enough space. Jude smiled and kissed my hand. You know, it sounds better and better. Sometimes you have good ideas. I smirked at her playful sarcasm. And you can invite your Marcel, I added. He's not my Marcel, she corrected me. Sorry, I forgot the word teacher. You can invite him too. I've never met him. Don't you think it's time for the two most important men in your life to meet? She took her hand away and crossed it over her chest. Why do you say that? He's not important to me. You and our son are the two most important men in my life. This jealousy of yours towards Marcel is stupid, and it's time for you to end it, Bill. Wow, honey, I said, trying to calm her down. As I said, I had to tread carefully, and I clearly went too far. I didn't mean anything bad. Just wanted to say that as your yogi, mentor, and spiritual leader, he plays a significant role in your life. I want to meet him. Maybe I'll even like him. Well, well, Jude replied, looking at me intently. Think about it, I said and ended the conversation there. We didn't talk until we got home, and it was the most unpleasant 45 minutes we'd had in a long time. That night we went to bed and I tried to initiate sex. Jude didn't answer at first, but after my persistent attention she finally succumbed. I didn't enjoy it. My thoughts were far away. Finally, she went to bed. She didn't even ask. She just decided the sex was over. I left home early on Monday, before Jude woke up. I needed to meet my partner. A lead has emerged in the investigation of the case, but it was not confirmed, and by lunchtime I was sitting at my table, planning to take a little interest in this yoga. The bell rang. Jude called. She asked if I had a few minutes to talk, which immediately made me wary. Yes, actually, there is, I answered. What's happened? I thought about your party idea again, she explained, and I really like it. We haven't invited anyone for a long time. I thought about maybe ordering catering so as not to spend all our time and energy on preparations. What do you think? I trust your taste, I replied. Do as you see fit. By the way, did you invite Marcel's yogis? My partner, Detective Eduardo Martinez, sat next to me and started chuckling. Yes, I did, Jude replied. He said it sounded fun and he would be happy to accept the invitation. Cool, cool, I repeated. This is all. Yes, that's all. Okay, I'll see you tonight then. Oh, Bill? Yes. Are you going to be late today? Yes, most likely we need to go through the victim's statement again. Why? Oh, nothing, she replied. I realized that there was something wrong in her voice. I just wanted to know if I needed to cook dinner. No, I replied, while my thoughts wandered into dark corners where they shouldn't go. I'll get something here. Okay, bye, honey. I love you, Jude said and hung up. As soon as I hung up, Martinez started laughing again. What kind of yogi is Marcel? Is this something like bear yoga? Shut up, I said, wincing. It's some kind of déjà vu, he said with a laugh. That joke has been used before, I replied, rolling my eyes and shaking my head. I hoped that when I repeated it to Jude it didn't look so stupid. Go over the case again, I sharply demanded. Damn it, Bill, Martinez replied angrily. We've already been through this 20 times. It's already 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm exhausted. If we go over this again today, it won't help us catch this bastard any faster. I didn't ask for your opinion, Martinez, I said, guardedly, my gaze never leaving his, my eyebrows quivering. The muscles in my neck tensed, and I looked like a gorilla ready to attack. Again. Immediately after speaking with Jude, I received a call. Another crime has occurred. This time, the victim was severely beaten. Martinez and I rushed to the hospital and tried to take a statement from her. She had little time to tell us before the drugs put her into a drowsy state. But what she said coincided with other cases. Okay, he gave in. In each case, The suspect was at the woman's home when she returned home. He wore a mask and latex gloves and used protection during sex. He did his job once and then apologized. He then forced them to shower and put their bed linen in the washing machine with enough bleach to disinfect a brothel. He also smashed their mobile phones and, in one case, when a woman had a landline phone, yanked it out of the wall before leaving. His height and weight are average, and we didn't find any physical traces. No DNA, nothing. Right. What exactly did the victim say before he left? Something like life sucks, and then you die, or something like that, Martinez replied. No, it was something else, I said, pulling out my notebook and turning the pages. Here it is. Life is suffering. The sooner you understand this, the sooner you can find happiness. I've heard this somewhere before. How strange is he, Martinez said, shaking his head. This bastard just beat up a girl and then philosophizes in front of her. He's a real cold-blooded bastard. Of course, I replied, but in some ways he's right. What is right? Martinez asked me, perplexed. The fact is that life is suffering. The evening of the party came quickly. Jude ordered catering from one of the trendy gastropubs that had opened in recent years and stocked up on enough wine and alcohol to intoxicate half the neighborhood. She even hired a local guy to DJ for the evening. We decided to have a cocktail hour, dinner, chat, and just have a good time starting at 8 p.m. Then, at 10, the DJ would turn up the music and our living room would turn into a dance floor. Jude started drinking around 6 p.m., wine first, then moved on to those as soon as the frozen margarita machine was ready. By the time the first guests arrived, a little before 8, she was already relaxed and cheerful. The Clarks, as always, came first. Then several of her yoga friends showed up with their companions. I made sure to meet everyone and treat them to drinks. By 8:30, Marcel had still not shown up, as had Jude's best friend Melissa and her husband Dave. I really wanted to talk to Dave this evening, so I was looking forward to their appearance. Finally, around 9, I asked Jude about it. Listen, honey, looks like your yogi and your best friend have worked you up, I said, sitting down next to her on the section of the living room couch. Oh, he said he'd come around 10 to avoid all this socializing, Jude replied, slightly slurring her tongue. What about Melissa and Dave? I asked. Her smile faded, and she took a sip of her margarita. Oh, I didn't invite them, she replied. You didn't invite me? I thought she was your best friend. Jude shrugged. No more. Suddenly, Jude's eyes lit up, and a wide smile appeared on her face. He has come, she said, getting up and leaving, as if she had forgotten about me. I looked at her, slightly shocked, as my wife hugged him and exchanged kisses on the cheek once, twice, 3 times. I knew this was the way it was in Europe, but damn, this is America and Judith is my wife. I stood up and walked straight to the yoga room. As I approached, I took in his appearance. Tony was right. Nothing special. Thin, with a ponytail, rather short. Damn, I look better than him, and I've had my nose broken 3 times. I didn't wait for us to be introduced. Jude didn't even seem interested in it. By the time I approached, 4 other wives had already gathered around him, hanging on his every word, as if before them was the Messiah himself, returned to earth. As I approached, I heard Jude giggle and say, maybe later, we'll see how it goes. I stood up to show him that I was 6 feet 2 inches tall and all 275 pounds of me. I spoke loudly, causing him to flinch, and Jude also turned to me in surprise. Hello, I said. You must be Marcel, I said as friendly as a big Texan can speak, avoiding any title and going by his first name. I extended my massive hand to him. I'm Bill, Jude's husband. Welcome to my home. He looked at Jude, then back at me, but didn't extend his hand. He looked a little scared. Sorry, I only kiss after at least 3 dates, I said, waving my open palm at him with a wide, friendly smile on my face. In Texas, we shake hands. This brought him back to reality, and Jude, too, stopped standing there in a daze. He extended his hand. I didn't try to squeeze it in my paw. That would have been rude and unnecessary. He already knew that I could crush him like a bug. His grip was weak, but I maintained mine to the level of a professional handshake. "Oh, Bill," Jude said, finding her voice. "This is Yogi Marcel. Yogi, this is my husband, Bill." She seemed nervous. She came closer and took my hand. I smiled and hugged her, sending a signal. "I already told him that, honey," I said, and kissed Jude on the cheek, sending another signal. Marcel spoke. His voice was slightly high-pitched and slightly nasal. He radiated self-satisfaction. From his manners, facial expression, and manner of speech, I realized that this guy has a very high opinion of himself. In my native language, there was an appropriate name for such people. We called them the Dodgers. From that moment on, in my eyes, he was not a yogi, not Marcel. He was a Dodger. I mean, you think you're a trickster, but you're not nearly as clever as you think you are. I was still holding his hand. He tried to pull her out. I let go. "Ah, so you are the lucky one who is married to this beautiful creature," he said with a strong French or pseudo-French accent. "I envy you very much, monsieur. I hope that someday I will be lucky enough to find a wife like her." Jude moved next to me. "Well, this one is already taken, Dodger," I said, smiling widely. "You'll have to look for another one." There was an awkward pause. I let it hang there for a few seconds and then laughed and patted Marcel on the shoulder a little harder than I should have. "Just kidding, Dodger. What will you drink?" "Oh, Yogi only drinks French wine," my wife suggested. I wondered how she knew his taste in alcohol, but decided not to bring it up. I bought several bottles especially for him. "Oh, okay, then let's go. Help me choose," I said. "What?" She was surprised. "I can tell which ones. I'd better stay here and entertain the guests." I pulled Jude's hand and pointed to Marcel and the four women who immediately took her place next to him. They seemed to be having a great time themselves. "Let's go." But she tried to resist, but I just smiled and pulled her along. When we reached the kitchen, she pulled out a bottle of French red wine from our small wine refrigerator. The wine looked expensive. Expensive wine for me is about $29. It looked damn expensive. I didn't embarrass myself by asking questions, but made a mental note that I'd Google the price later. I took my time opening the bottle to find out a little bit about what was what. "You know, that was a very friendly greeting you gave Marcel," I said, spinning the corkscrew and imagining it in one of the yogi's eyeballs. "Oh, are you talking about kissing?" she asked, more drunk than she realized. "Yes, I haven't seen this before," I answered, spinning the corkscrew even more slowly. "He's French," she replied. "Kissing is normal and nothing special." "Is it true?" I asked, trying not to show my irritation. I didn't know that. "There are a lot of things you don't know, Bill," she said with a chuckle. "Lots of things." I stopped opening the bottle and handed Jude a bottle of water. "You need to drink this," I told her. When she put the bottle down without opening it, I picked it up, unscrewed the cap, imagining that I was twisting Marcel's neck with it, and returned it to her hands. "Drink, or I won't let you drink for the rest of the evening." "Yes, sir," she replied, giving a mock salute, and then took a sip of water. "So why didn't you invite Melissa and Dave?" I asked again, hoping to get an answer this time. She rolled her eyes and drank more water. "She's just a drama queen. I didn't want any drama tonight." "Drama?" I asked, pretending that I was having trouble getting the cork out of the bottle. What kind of drama could she create? I don't really know myself, but she was causing trouble at the yoga studio and Marcel told her she was no longer welcome there. I realized that I would have to contact Dave myself and find out their version of events. I made a note to do this on Monday. Problems. What kind of problems could Melissa create? She's a sweetheart and one of your best friends. Damn it, wasn't she the one who introduced you to yoga? Jude shrugged and took another sip of water. She seemed to be a little infatuated with Marcel and wanted something from him that he wasn't ready to give. so he decided that it was better for her not to come to the studio anymore. It didn't surprise me that Jude knew more than she was initially willing to admit. This only increased my suspicion. "Are you kidding?" I asked with a hint of skepticism in my voice. "Are you saying Melissa wanted to cheat on Dave with him?" I pointed my thumb at the other room, meaning her yoga room. Jude just smiled and raised her eyebrows. "That's what she told me." "Did she tell you she wants to cheat on Dave?" "Not really. She said she wanted to sleep with Yogi Marcel." I stared at my wife in disbelief. She screwed the cap on the water bottle, preparing to return to the party. I stopped her. "This is the second wife and student of the Dodger, about whom I hear that they want to cheat on their husbands with him. Seems to be a recurring theme with this guy. Should I start worrying?" Jude came up to me and kissed me tenderly, with a sweet smile. "Darling, you have nothing to worry about. You're still my big Neanderthal." She placed the bottle on the counter and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me with a sinking feeling in my stomach. I really had reason to worry. As the evening wore on, the music got louder and people started dancing. All night I watched Jude closely, not allowing her to disappear from my sight for a moment. I'm a professional observer, so it was easy for me to keep an eye on her without making it seem like I was stalking her. When she sat, it was always next to the Dodger. When she danced, he was always nearby, and they invariably came together for a few songs and then went their separate ways. Outwardly, they did not show that they had come for each other, but I saw it in the looks they exchanged, in the way she touched his hand. Jude continued to drink, and I could see how it was affecting her. Her reactions became slower. She was a little unsteady on her feet, even without music. I knew her limit with alcohol, and she had long since exceeded it. And then the music changed, and the DJ announced that there will be a block of slow, romantic songs. Marcel pulled Jude towards him, pressing himself against her. She looked around quickly, not seeing me, and laced her fingers behind his neck. This was the last straw. I jumped out of my hiding place and headed straight towards them. I put my hand on Trickster's shoulder and patted him. "Dance with me," I declared. It was not a question or a request. They both turned to me. Dodger grinned and said, "After this block of songs." He turned back to my wife, his face just inches from hers. His hands were on her hips, holding her close to him. I grabbed his middle finger on his right hand and pulled him back. I had to follow him with my hand. The trickster seemed to wince. I pulled him away a little to separate them and glared at him as if I was ready to tear him apart. "Now I will dance with my wife, Marcel. Find yourself another wife to dance with." I stepped between them and pulled Jude towards me, letting go of his hand. Jude wrapped her arms around my neck, swaying to the music. "Why did you do this?" she asked in a quiet and slightly hoarse voice. "You're my fucking wife," I whispered in her ear. "I will kill anyone who tries to take you away." "He was just being nice," she said, snuggling closer to me. "I think you scared him." "Great," I said. "He should be afraid." We danced to the music, and when the song ended, Jude tried to leave, but I didn't let her go. "A block of romantic songs is playing now," I told her. "I reserve all the slow dances for myself. You know that." She nodded and laid her head on my shoulder. "If he was just being nice," I said, "then why did he cuddle up to you during the dance?" Jude pulled her head back and stared at me with surprise on her face. "He didn't." She began to answer, but stopped short, realizing that I must have seen this when I separated them. "That is, it was accidental. This happens a lot when couples slow dance," she said, as if it were a given. "You're not a couple," I reminded her. "We are a couple." With these words, I grabbed her and pressed her closer to me, just like he did. "Don't ever forget this." There was a pause in the music, and the DJ took a break for 15 minutes. Most of the guests gathered in one of two places, on the terrace to smoke or in the kitchen to grab snacks and drinks. I was in the kitchen watching Jude and Trickster. They left through the living room, so I quickly slipped outside through the kitchen door. I greeted a couple of our friends at the fire pit, often glancing toward the far end of the deck. Jude and Marcel stood in the shade, sitting side by side on one of our lounge chairs. After a couple of minutes, Jude stood up and turned to face him, leaning down and probably giving him a glimpse of the neckline of her dress. Then she laughed. I heard her quiet laugh from where I stood watching. Then she turned and swayed into the house. Marcel waited for about 60 seconds, then stood up and walked towards the door. I intercepted him just before he opened it, putting my hand on his arm. He seemed surprised to see me. "We need to talk, Dodger," I said. "What the hell do you want, man?" he asked sharply, without the slightest hint of a French accent, as he pulled his hand out of my grip. "Problem?" I asked. "No problem. Not yet. Let's sit down for a minute and talk." He looked at the door, then took a step back. I pointed to the table on the terrace and pulled out a chair for him. "Sit down. It won't take long, and you can get back to your business." Reluctantly, he sat down. "This is your home, and I am your guest," he said, drinking the remaining wine with a slight French accent. "Où en France as two grandies?" I suddenly asked him where exactly in France he grew up. He looked at me. I collected my thoughts and began to speak French, although I had not used it for years. I wanted to make sure I pronounced everything correctly enough. I told him that I had studied French for several years and could communicate quite well in it. I offered to speak French if it was more convenient for him. I could see him starting to sweat as I spoke. "I studied French in high school and university for several years. I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I can converse adequately. Shall we speak in French, please?" "Your accent is so bad that I can't understand half of what you say," he said contemptuously, and then added in French, "Mais, si ça te fait te sentir grand dans le pantalon on peut parler français." I wasn't sure, but I thought he said something like, "We can speak French if it makes you feel big in your pants." Sly. Well, maybe he really does speak French, but that doesn't make him French. "You know, I noticed you and Jude have a special relationship," I said. He shrugged. "Jude is a beautiful woman and a kind soul. She is a great student and will make a great yoga instructor. Did she tell you that I asked her to become my assistant and help run my studio?" Frankly, his words shocked me. Jude didn't say a word about it. I tried not to show my surprise, but I did a bad job. "Oh, I guess she didn't tell you anything," he added with a grin. I wanted to punch him and wipe that grin off his face. "So maybe you could help me," I said, abruptly changing tactics. "Should I help you?" he asked again. "How can I help you?" "Jude has seemed like a stranger lately," I explained, making it up as I went along. I only had the basics of a plan, but I didn't realize that I would need this course of action. "And you probably see her more often than I do." "I see her often, yes," he agreed. "I'm worried that she might be going to cheat on me," I said quickly, and then added, "or close to it." He looked at me. "I love my wife more than anything in the world. We have been married for a long time, and she is not just a wife to me. She is my life. If you noticed anything, I would really appreciate this information. Maybe I can figure out what's going on and put an end to it before it's too late." "Do you want me to help you spy on her?" he asked, with obvious pleasure in his voice. "Spying is too dirty a word," I said. "Just if you suddenly notice something. It will help me if you tell me." "Of course," he replied. "I can assure you that she is never with any other man but me." These words did not give me confidence. I nodded. "Listen, Dodger," I said, standing up, towering over him. "If anyone ever sleeps with Jude, I will kill them. I'll put 2 bullets in his head, and then I'll take his corpse into the forest and throw it in the swamp, weighted down." He looked at me with his mouth open. I shook his hand, firmly. "It's only a matter of time until I figure out who's trying to seduce her. When I find out, this man and I will talk somewhere where no one can hear his screams. If it turns out he slept with her, he's dead." He nodded again. I turned and went into the house. Jude was not in any of the rooms on the first floor. This was a bad sign. I went upstairs and found her lying on our bed, wearing only a satin robe, which was open, revealing her naked body. She was unconscious. I covered her with a blanket, and when I was about to leave, she, without opening her eyes, quietly grabbed my hand and whispered, which gradually turned into Marcel. All. The party is over. I made it back downstairs just in time to see Trickster walk out the front door. I don't think I scared him too much when I interrupted their dance, but now I hoped he really did. I found the DJ outside. He was using something. You know this is illegal, I told him as I took it. I could arrest you for possession. But I'll just confiscate it. Put away your equipment and get out. The party is over. But I still have 1 block left, he protested. Yes, I know, I replied. It's okay, I'll pay you for a full performance, but it seems the party is already over. Go home, and stay away from this nonsense. You're not very attentive, are you, Dodger? I said, pressing the cold metal of my gun against his ribs. What did I say about what I would do to the bastard who slept with my wife? We didn't do anything, Jude said hastily. I swear. Is it true? I asked, raising my eyebrows. Nothing. Yes, nothing, she confirmed. Trickster, I'm going to move to the other side of the table. If you try to run away or make a scene, I'll shoot you something. Understood? He nodded. I slipped out of the booth and walked around to sit opposite her. For the first time ever, Jude looked me straight in the eyes. She looked down, full of shame. I put the envelope on the table and took out a folder from it. He took out a photograph and placed it in front of her. In the photo, Jude was in Marcel's arms, and they were kissing. Nothing, huh? I asked. Where did you get this? Asked Jude. Oh, so you're not denying it. You just want to know where I got it from. How about this? I said, showing the next photo of them sitting on the couch in Marcel's office. Probably your private yoga lessons, I said. What is the name of this pose? Marcel clearly panicked as he looked at the photographs. I think he was stunned that I got them. He was probably wondering what else I had. What about this? In the photo, Marcel was on the same couch having sex with a woman, and the woman had hair similar to Jude's. It's not me, Jude shouted, grabbing the photo. I swear to God, it's not me. Is it true? I asked calmly, taking out another photo. Oh my God, exclaimed Jude. She looked first at the photograph and then at Marcel. Who is this woman? She turned to me. It's not me. You must understand this. This is not my body. I took out another photo and placed it in front of her. Her face was clearly visible. I silently placed the photo in front of my wife. She looked at her. Her eyes became wider and wider, tears began to form, and then rolled down her face. How could you? The next day, Jude had a severe hangover and had virtually no memory of the events of the previous night. I didn't mention anything about her calling me Marcel or her behavior with him at the party. I also didn't ask her about the invitation to become a yoga instructor and run a studio. I decided to wait to see if she would tell me herself. Over the next few weeks, things between us became a little warmer, just like in the old days. Jude was at home more often. Several of her classes were canceled, leaving the yogi with less time to meet with her. Perhaps I managed to scare him, and with luck, everything will return to normal. I didn't rush her and tried to give Jude some space so she could sort out her feelings on her own. Unfortunately, she seemed irritable and capricious and often took it out on me. When she wasn't angry, she became distant. In the second week, I decided that this had already gone on too long. I had made a decision about our future, and on Thursday, I felt it was time to discuss it with her. I called Jude and said I wanted to spend the evening together. To my surprise, she immediately agreed, without any objections. When I got home, Jude was in the kitchen, dishing out homemade chili. "Hello, darling," she called when I entered the kitchen. "I thought it would be better to eat right away so that we have more time in the evening for whatever we do." She winked at me as she said this. "So, what happened? What did you want to talk about?" Before I could answer, she interrupted me. "Because I also have news that I want to celebrate with you. Can you grab us a couple of beers?" I didn't expect her to have news, so I was a little surprised. I had planned that I would do most of the talking this evening. My goal was to finally close the issue with Marcel and move on. The fact that she was going to celebrate something gave me a bad feeling. Of course, I answered, took 2 bottles of beer from the refrigerator, opened them, and handed her one. Hold it. And immediately started talking. As you know, this case I'm working on is really stressing me out, I said, taking a sip of my beer. I'm like the black guy from Lethal Weapon. Too old for this bullshit. I'm tired, Jude, tired of the stress, tired of hardly being home with you. I miss our life as it was before. I want to get out of this. Jude looked at me with an expression of both concern and curiosity. What do you mean, go out? Quit what? I applied for a transfer to the position of instructor at the police academy, I explained. At the end of the month, I will stop investigating. I want to take a short vacation and go somewhere for a couple of weeks to restore our relationship. This is long overdue, and I hope we can reconnect with why we fell in love in the first place. She looked at me for several seconds without reacting. And what does this mean exactly? She asked. This means that I will have a regular job from 9 to 5. No more late shifts, no more days off from work. I will be able to spend more time with you and make up for all those years when I neglected you and us. She nodded. I'm a good judge of people and can usually read their reactions easily. This is part of my job. However, now I couldn't understand what she was thinking. You don't look happy, I said. She answered with a tight smile. No, no, of course, I'm glad, she said quickly. I'm just surprised. Being a detective was everything you dreamed of. I'm surprised you're ready to leave her. I'm leaving her for us, I said. You are more important to me than any job, anything or person. I emphasized the last words, trying to convey the hidden meaning. She looked down, nervously examining her hands, as if deep in thought. When she didn't speak, I encouraged her. Well, now what's your news? I asked, sensing something bad. Oh, it's not nearly as dramatic as your news, she replied, shaking her head quietly. We can talk about this another time. Let's eat. I realized she was trying to change the subject, but I wasn't going to leave it like that. We needed to discuss everything, not shy away. No, no, I smiled at her. I want to hear. If it's worth celebrating, then it's good news. So go ahead, tell me. Okay, she replied. It's not that dramatic. She hesitated for a second, took a long sip of beer, and continued. Marcel suggested that I get certified as a yoga instructor so that I could teach classes in the studio and become his assistant manager. It would be a paid job. I know you probably think it's stupid, but it means a lot to me, and I really want to do it. Great, I said, adding, I'm proud of you. I'm sure you'll do great. So Jude finally told me what Slick had already revealed to me at our party. It took her a long time to confess. I was hoping that maybe he had changed his mind and withdrawn the offer. Ever since Marcel told me about this, I've been thinking about it. I realized that refusing the idea or trying to talk her out of it would only push her further away. The last thing she expected was for me to support her. She looked puzzled. You really don't mind? She asked. I thought you wouldn't like it if I agreed. This means that I will have to spend more time with Marcel and less time at home. I know, I answered her. And that suits you. It suits me, I lied. I trust you. She jumped up, sat on my lap, and began showering me with kisses. I love you, Bill, she said. At that moment, she completely stunned and puzzled me. So you won't mind if I go to the certification course? It's a little expensive, $5,000. She looked at me like a little girl asking Daddy for a pony. I almost choked. 5,000 for the course? It takes 2 weeks, she explained. Yes, but still, that's $2,500 a week. Yes, but the course is conducted during a retreat in one of the resorts in Costa Rica, she added. Wow, I said, raising my hands as if to stall the conversation. 2 weeks in Costa Rica? I asked, dumbfounded. Yes, 2 weeks of intense training and classes all day, every day. At the end of the retreat, I will be fully certified by the International Institute of Yoga Studies and will be able to teach accredited classes. In the yoga world, Bill, this is a big deal. Usually the waiting list for participation is about 2 years, but Marcel managed to use his connections to get us included. Alarm bells started ringing in my head. I was speechless and couldn't think of anything to say. "When will this be?" I asked. "I just told you that I won't be able to go until next month. I'm busy with this until I start a new job." "Oh, that's okay, honey," she said. "I'll go alone. I didn't mean that you should come with me." "But you said us," I clarified. "You said that Marcel included us." "Oh, yes," Jude stared at her hands, blushing. "I meant us, like me and Marcel." She looked up and then looked down again, as if she couldn't or wouldn't look me in the eyes. Wait, I blurted out, trying to remain calm. "Are you going to go to a resort in Costa Rica with Marcel? Alone? For 2 weeks?" "Well, yes," she answered nervously. "Marcel is my mentor and sponsor, and he needs to be there to support me. Can't I go with you and support you?" "Well, no, it's only for people who do yoga," she explained. "You would die of boredom there." I took a sip of beer. Looks like I didn't scare slick enough that time. "When is this?" I asked. "Next month, starting on the 23rd, she answered. She opened the resort's website on her tablet to show me. The place looked amazing, like the perfect romantic getaway. I remember the name. I was going to explore this place later. "I see," I said dryly. "Are you upset?" she asked. "Rather disappointed," I said. "I love you, Jude. You know that, right?" "I know." She slid off my lap and sat down in her chair. "Disappointed? Why?" "Why?" I asked, my voice rising an octave. "You're going to go to a romantic tropical paradise with another man without me for 2 weeks. I'm disappointed that you think I won't be affected by this. I'm disappointed that you think this is normal at all. Disappointed in what this says about our marriage." "Honey," she began, trying to calm me down, "it's only 2 weeks, and it's a work trip. You yourself went on business trips for longer periods of time, and I never made you feel guilty about it." "That's different," I objected. "I didn't go to a resort for 2 weeks with a young, attractive woman who was clearly trying to seduce me." "Bill," she replied sharply, "Marcel is not trying to seduce me. This is a purely business relationship. That's it." I finished my beer, and we both fell silent as Jude flipped through photos of the resort. I noticed that most of the pictures were of couples in romantic poses and situations. There were no yoga classes in sight. Jude got that dreamy look on her face again. I sighed slowly and sadly and asked, "So, when and where do you want to be notified?" "Were you notified? What are you talking about? I've already divided the chili into bowls." "Not about that notice," I answered. "The divorce notice." "Divorce?" she screamed, looking at me in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "Divorce, that is, dissolution of marriage. This usually happens when one spouse cheats on the other." "I know what divorce is," Jude exploded. "No one is cheating on you, Bill. Why are you even talking about divorce?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're going to go away for 2 weeks to a romantic tropical paradise with your boyfriend Marcel." "He's not my friend, damn it," she exclaimed. "This is a certification course. I will work there." With Slick, I added, "Were you going to rent one room for two?" He probably suggested taking one suite instead of 2 rooms to save money. The look of surprise on her face confirmed my words. "Well, Marcel pays for everything," she objected, "so I have to meet in terms of expenses." "So it's still luxury," I grinned. "Yes, but he will sleep in one part and I will sleep in the other. I told you, this is a purely platonic relationship." "I don't care if it's platonic, sophisticated, or Pythagorean," I said, "but I'm not going to be married to a woman who goes on vacation alone with another man and lives in the same room with him." "But you said you want me to get a certificate," she said pleadingly. "Yes," I agreed, "but not in this way." "But Bill," she objected, "that's how it's done. You don't understand yoga. You just don't understand. They don't obsess over things like you do." I noticed that there was a division in her words, as if I was the only one who was worried and worried. "For sex? So, are you planning to have sex with him too?" I asked angrily. "No," she screamed. You are turning my words around. I didn't say that. I simply said that they do not consider such trips in the context of sex. It's about yoga, communication with nature, and spiritual unity. It's not about sex. Great, I said. Looks like a wonderful trip. Since it will be next month, I will already be starting a new job and will be able to take some time off. I'll go with you. I'll be your roommate instead of Marcel, and I'll pay the difference. Let him take his damn room. At night, I will be by your side, as it should be between husband and wife. This won't do, she protested. Why not? This is an ideal option for everyone. You can study all day, Marcel can support you. And most importantly, you and I will be together at night, as spouses should be. You'll be bored all day, she explained. I won't be able to spend time with you. I laughed. Jude, this is a tropical paradise. I won't be bored. You won't have to look after me. I'm a grown boy. I said I wanted to take a long vacation. This fits perfectly. We will be able to combine your course with our holiday and stay for a week or two after completing your training. This is not necessary, she screamed. Forget about it. I hope that for once you would be mature and accept the new image of me, that you would trust me enough to allow me to do something like this without interfering with your primal, Neanderthal instincts. I was wrong. Wait, let me clarify. Are you willing to cancel your entire trip and give up your certification just because I want to go with you? I will not interfere in any way with your classes or your certification. The only thing that my presence can disrupt is your and Marcel's romantic vacation and shared accommodation in a suite. So being alone with him for 2 weeks is more important to you than getting a certificate. Of course not, she snapped. This is ridiculous. Then the choice is quite simple. You can get a certificate if I go with you and we stay married. Or you can go with Marcel, live in the same suite, and get a divorce. Instead, you choose not to go at all. And this means one thing: certification is just an excuse to go with Marcel. If you can't go with him and have to go with me, you no longer want to go and are ready to give up the certificate. You're talking nonsense, Jude exclaimed. Sorry for even mentioning this. Forget everything. I wish I could, I replied, but I can't. We have problems, Jude. We hardly spend any time together, and when we do, we usually argue. You're in the studio with Marcel all the time. I want my wife back. I want our life back. Such a marriage was not part of my plans. Maybe we really should get a divorce. Are you serious? Her voice trembled. You want to divorce me because I found something that makes me happy other than you? No, I answered. I don't want to divorce you because you found something that makes you happy. I want to divorce you because you found someone other than me who makes you happy. She sat, her hands were shaking, her mouth was open, as if she wanted to say something, but the words could not be found. Finally, she managed to squeeze out, I don't want to get a divorce, I love you. And I want a wife who is faithful to me in everything, who will remain with me until the end of her days, I answered. I thought it was you. Now I'm not sure anymore. It's me, she said, and tears rolled down her cheeks. It was always me. Nothing has changed. You have changed, I corrected her. My phone rang persistently and loudly. It was a work phone. If it were personal, I wouldn't answer. But unfortunately, I could not afford such luxury. I was on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Reluctantly, I picked up the phone and answered. Yes, Martinez was on the line. Another crime. This time it's bad. She's dead. Crap. How is it that in the modern world, with DNA, cameras at every turn, and forensic techniques, we were chasing a ghost? 8 crimes, the level of brutality increased each time, and almost no clues as to who was behind it. The criminal was extremely careful and left almost no evidence, and we did not have a single witness. At 2 different crime scenes, we had 2 small DNA samples that matched each other, but did not lead us to a suspect. It was only a matter of time, but how long? And now this. Victim number 9. Killed. This incident amazed me. I felt like it was my fault, that I didn't work hard enough, didn't try hard enough to catch this crazy guy. Did problems at home prevent me from concentrating on work? I was one of the best investigators in the department, and I had nothing. This unfortunate woman died because of me. I stopped at room 27 of the Drop Inn, a seedy motel on the outskirts of town known for being favored by prostitutes, merchants, and those who rented a room for a few hours. By the time I arrived, the forensic team was already hard at work, and the victim's body was being prepared for removal. I looked inside. Someone must have heard or seen something. I saw her face. My heart jumped into my throat, and I lost my breath. I stepped back, shook my head, and stared at the familiar features. "Martinez," I shouted. "Eh?" he responded from the room. "Do you have documents for the victim?" I asked, but already knew the answer. He carefully left the room. Yes, her bag was in the corner. "Driver's license in the name of Melissa Goodman from Allen," he said, watching me closely. "This is your area, Bill. Do you know her?" "Yes, I know." It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my career, but I didn't let anyone else tell Dave or tell him what happened. I went to his house myself. He was there and opened the door for me. "Bill, what are you doing here?" he asked when he saw me. My appearance clearly made him wary. "Is it something with Melissa? What happened? Is she okay?" Questions poured out of him, faster than I could respond to them. "Dave, can we sit down?" I asked, motioning for him to come inside. He stepped back and let me into the house. "Of course, but where is Melissa? Is she okay?" We sat down in his formal living room. It was in perfect order, and I realized that it was used as rarely as ours. I took a deep breath. "Dave, there's no easy way to say this. Melissa is dead." "What?" he blurted out. "Don't joke like that, Bill. This is serious." "Sorry, Dave, but it's true. Her body was found a couple of hours ago." "This is impossible. She went to a bachelorette party with Jude and the yoga girls." He jumped up and grabbed the phone. "I'll call her. You'll see she's okay." "Dave, she's been identified. She had her bag with her driver's license, and I saw her myself. It was Melissa." "There must be a mistake," he said, sitting back down in his chair. I stood up and poured him a glass of bourbon. He took it with shaking hands, looked at it, and drank it in one gulp. "Are you sure it's her?" he asked as I poured him another. "Yes." "I can't believe it. How did this happen? Was it an accident? Was she drunk?" I poured myself a glass and drank, feeling the familiar burning sensation. "No," I said. "We believe she was killed." "Killed? What are you even talking about? For what? Who could do this?" He jumped up again. I saw that he was on the verge of a breakdown. I put my hand on his shoulder, trying to calm him down. "Sorry, Dave. You said she was going to spend the evening with her friends. Did she say where exactly?" Dave stared into space. "Eh? I don't know. Some new restaurants on the square in McKinney. Ask Jude. She was there." "Dave, Jude was with me. She said she hasn't spoken to Melissa in weeks. Perhaps Melissa had someone else?" "No way," Dave shouted. "Where is she? I have to see her. I want to see my wife." I nodded. "I'll take you to her. I have to ask. Where have you been all evening?" I was ashamed to play the role of a cop in front of my friend, but it was my duty. "Fuck you," he said, looking at me with rage. "Do you think I have something to do with it?" "No," I answered. "Of course not. But in cases of murder, spouses are always considered suspects. Someone will definitely ask you this question. Better me than someone else." Dave was crying. I saw tears running down his cheeks, and he didn't even try to wipe them away. I worked late. I took the pizza and went home. I was waiting for Melissa. "Oh my God," he fell to his knees. "She will never come back again." He let out a long, heartbreaking cry that pierced me to the core. I took Dave to the morgue. He was allowed to see Melissa, but when he tried to touch her, he had to be restrained. It was the most painful thing I have ever seen at work, and maybe in my life. I saw his pain, his loss. He lost the love of his life. I thought about Jude. Is it over between us? Perhaps it's too late to save our marriage, or can I stop what's happening and get her back? Do I want it back? As I was about to take Dave back, Martinez pulled me aside. Forensic experts say they found a lot of prints. And not only that, the doctor said that they conducted a test and found biological DNA of some person on the victim. On Melissa, I corrected him. Her name was Melissa. Sorry, Melissa. He fell silent, lowering his voice. It's not like our criminal to be so careless. He had always used protection before. He's starting to flirt, I said. He is too confident in himself and begins to make mistakes. Hey, are you okay? My partner asked me. You are not collected. He left fingerprints and DNA all over the place. Our criminal is too careful to behave like that. Maybe you should take a step back, brother. You're too close to this matter. You can't think clearly. That's not the point, I replied, admitting that I really wasn't at my best. This is personal. Personal. Brother, I have been your partner for more than 10 years. What's happening? I knew Martinez wouldn't back down. With a heavy sigh, I confessed to him my suspicion that Jude was cheating on me with her yoga instructor. Oh, brother, this is tough. I heard about these yoga trainers. They have all sorts of tricks with sex, like tantra or something like that. Tantra, I corrected him. Yes, that's it. Do they get into these women's heads? I can't believe Jude would do this to you, brother. Are you sure? Not really, I explained. So far, these are only suspicions. But that's why I'm so distracted. I think more about what Jude is doing than about work. What's his name? This idiot. I'll go to him and explain that you shouldn't touch married women. Marcel Bothels, but don't touch him. I'll deal with Slick myself. No, brother, that I will cover you, if you need an alibi or anything else. I nodded and assured him that this would not be necessary. You know, my cousin Pancho has a 3,000-acre ranch in West Texas. Let's bury that bastard there, and no one will find the body. I don't know if he was serious, but knowing Martinez, I realized that he could be honest. I promised that I wouldn't do anything stupid and that I would keep my personal problems under control. As he left, he shouted, "Call me if you change your mind." I picked up Dave and we drove back, but he spoke. I can't go home, Bill. I can't be there. Can you take me to the hotel? I don't think I can sleep, but I can't see her at home. Of course, I answered. You can stay with us for the night. No, he said. I want to be alone. Okay, I understand. I drove him to the nearby Nilo Hotel, and when we pulled up to the front door, he sighed heavily. Melissa said that life is suffering, he said, and his words seemed to hit me over the head, almost stopping my heart. I didn't know what that meant until now. What did you say? I asked. Life is suffering, he repeated. It's some kind of Buddhist expression. She learned it in a yoga studio. Melissa said her instructor repeated this during class. My brain was frantically trying to make sense of the connections. Suddenly, my mental activity began to work in accelerated mode. You said Melissa continued to go to class, to the studio? Yes, she loved those damn activities. To Marcel. Yes, 2 or 3 times a week. Why? Do you think her death had something to do with the studio? He was desperately trying to cling to some hope. I tried to take him away from this thought. No, I said, just trying to figure out what Melissa was doing. We need to explore all possible versions. Try to rest. Dave nodded and got out of the car. He seemed to want to say something else, but changed his mind. I watched as he walked into the hotel and then ran home as fast as he could. It was almost 4 in the morning, but I went straight to the bedroom and woke Jude. She didn't protest and got up to put the coffee on. I needed answers, but I wasn't ready to tell her about Melissa. Jude, you said that Melissa stopped going to yoga classes. When did this happen? It was a couple of months ago. She quarreled with Marcel, and since then she stopped going. She didn't appear in the studio at all. No, what? Jude asked, looking at me suspiciously. Just curious, I replied. Have you ever heard the phrase, life is suffering, in the studio? Yes, she said. Yogi Marcel often talks about this. Buddha said that life is suffering. This is the most common translation of the Sanskrit word dukkha. Dukkha means several things, but it also means pain, suffering, and dissatisfaction. This is part of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Why are you asking? Are you interested in Buddhism? Very interested, I replied. I paused, then asked the main question. Do you think it's possible that Melissa had an affair with Marcel? I was afraid of her reaction, but I was surprised that she didn't react at all. She simply took a sip of her coffee and then calmly replied, No, not the slightest chance. Why are you so sure? I asked. He swore to me that there was nothing between them, and I believe him. Jude, I began, you trust people too much. You have no reason to simply believe everything he says. Bill, Jude replied, I haven't told you everything about the reasons why Melissa and I are no longer friends. I didn't want to upset you, so I didn't tell you. I felt a familiar pain in my stomach. Go ahead, tell me, I said, preparing for what she would say. Melissa was obsessed with Marcel, like a real fan. She followed him like a shadow and was jealous if he paid attention to other women in class. I asked him then if they were close, and he swore they weren't. He said that she made advances to him many times, but he rejected her. It got so bad that one day she attacked me when I was taking a private lesson from him. She accused me of sleeping with Marcel. Jude fell silent, blushing and avoiding looking at me. Did you sleep with him? I asked. Bill, she exclaimed indignantly. I told you he never touched me. Okay, continue. I told Melissa the same thing I told you. This seemed to calm her down, and she moved away a little. And then something strange began. She asked if I would like to sleep with Marcel myself, and invited the three of me to spend the night with him. I was angry at her for having such an idea. A real friend would never suggest that I cheat on my husband. After that, Marcel kicked her out of the studio, and since then I have not communicated with her. I watched Jude carefully, trying to see if I believed her. It seemed so. I changed the subject. I also knew that soon the news about Melissa would leak to the media and Jude would find out. She'll figure out that I already knew and will be furious that I didn't tell her. I took a deep breath to prepare myself and then continued. Jude, Melissa's dead. This caught her attention. What did you say? She asked in shock. Melissa is dead, I repeated. I swallowed hard and added, they killed her. My God, Jude exclaimed. When? How? Raising my hands, I said, I can't go into detail, honey. We think this may be related to a series of crimes I'm investigating, but we're not sure yet. Something doesn't add up in this case, and it seems Melissa might be seeing her lover. Lover? She asked, shocked. Then, as if all the pieces of a puzzle fit together, surprise appeared on her face. Wait, so that's why you asked about her and Marcel? Do you think he could have been involved in her murder? I felt that Jude was angry. I'm just doing my job, Jude, I told her. I have to consider all possible possibilities. I understand, she replied, her voice becoming softer, and she hugged me. I'm sorry I yelled at you. We hugged and stood there for several moments. I allowed myself to just hold my wife in my arms and not think about what might have happened between her and her yoga instructor. I love you, I whispered, trying not to cry. I love you too, Jude replied quietly. I had been awake for 30 hours when I walked through the doors of the Happy Life yoga studio. Jude's car was in the parking lot, so I expected to see her, but there was no one in the studio. I noticed the class schedule on the wall. The next lesson was to start in 45 minutes. The place was strangely quiet. At the end of the hall, next to the toilets, I saw a door with a sign that said, Private Area. I assumed it was Marcel's office. I knocked loudly on the door and then tried to open it. It was locked. Several minutes passed, then I heard someone unlock the door. The door opened and Marcel walked out, immediately closing it behind him. Bill! He exclaimed loudly, as if he was surprised to see me, or perhaps he wanted Jude to know about my arrival. What are you doing here? Have you come for Jude? No, I replied. I need to talk to you about an important topic. Do you have a couple of minutes? He hesitated. Yes, of course. Can we talk in your office? The matter is delicate. I need to discuss it with you in private." He looked back at the office door, thinking for a few seconds. Yes, of course. Just a minute. I was just teaching a private lesson. Give me some time." I felt my blood begin to boil. My wife was in his office, and he tried to delay my entry. He opened the door a little way to step inside, but I pushed past him. "I don't have much time," I explained, pushing my way inside. Jude wasn't there. The office was empty, but I could still smell the light scent of her favorite perfume. Marcel sat down at his desk. There was a large sofa near the table, and 2 yoga mats were laid out on the floor in the practice area. I was sure one of them belonged to Jude. "How can I help?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. Marcel didn't know I was a cop. Jude tried not to tell her friends and acquaintances about my work. She wasn't embarrassed by my profession, but she didn't like that people behaved differently when they knew what I did. I knew that Martinez was going to visit him for questioning, so I decided to use the time to do a little checking. "Do you remember our conversation at the party? When did I ask you to keep an eye on Jude and pay attention if anyone tries to seduce her?" "Yes, you asked me to spy on her for you," he said with the same smug grin he wore at the party. "I have nothing to report, to be honest. I didn't see anyone flirting with her." "I'm just more worried," I said, looking around his office. I noticed a security camera mounted on the wall. It was aimed at the sofa and not at the door or table, which seemed strange to me. "Especially after I found out about Melissa," I added. "Yes, terrible news," he replied without showing much emotion. "Jude told me about it this morning. I'm very sorry for her family." So you can see why I'm now even more concerned about who my wife is dating. "Of course," he nodded. "Certainly. I'll look after her for you, you can rest assured." Yes, I didn't need his eyes on her. At that moment, the door opened and Jude entered the office. She was slightly out of breath. "Bill," she said with a smile, "what are you doing here?" "Oh, I was nearby and saw your car. I decided to come in and see if you wanted to have lunch." As an investigator, I needed to be able to quickly come up with plausible stories. "Oh, she said, glancing briefly at Marcel. "I've already had a snack. I'm sorry." I stood up and prepared to leave. I almost felt sick thinking about what she might have just eaten. I had to hold back my gag reflex, which only made me wonder if she had to hold back too. "Oh yes," I said, turning to Marcel. "By the way, Jude and I discussed going to Costa Rica and the idea of going there with a yoga instructor. I support her. As I said, it would be inappropriate for you to share a room with her, so if she decides to go, I will go with her, and she and I will share a room together. This will eliminate any possibility of random pranks." He started to grin when I brought it up, but the grin never fully developed, and I had a complete grin on my face. "I'll leave you two alone so you can continue with whatever you're doing here." I kissed Jude with the intention of showing my possessiveness and left. Only after that did it occur to me that I might have just kissed her on the lips after him. Driving past her car, I stopped, got out, and attached the GPS tracker under the rear bumper. It was pitch dark. The sky was overcast, and there was no moon. Black clothing, gloves, and a ski mask helped me become almost invisible as I sneaked through the woods behind the shopping center. I kept my eyes on the security camera on the corner of the building, which was slowly rotating back and forth. After waiting for her to turn in the opposite direction, I rushed to the back entrance of the Happy Life Yoga Studio. Luckily, the corner of the building and a large dumpster shielded me from the camera as it turned back towards me. I quickly disabled the security system and then picked the lock. Opening the door, I silently slipped inside. I found myself in a small, curtained alcove at the back of Marcel's private office. Well, now it's clear how Jude managed to escape when I came here earlier that day. She must have left through the back door and ran around the building to enter through the front entrance. Not a bad move for someone who is hiding something. I pressed myself against the back wall of the office and used a mop to knock the cheap security camera off its mount. It was a Bluetooth camera that broadcast an image somewhere to the cloud. I stomped on it until I was sure it wouldn't broadcast anything anymore. Then I sat down at Marcel's desk and turned on his computer. I hoped Slippery didn't care too much about physical safety. I touched the mouse and the screen came to life, showing a Windows desktop littered with folders. So he really wasn't that worried about physical safety. I flipped through the folders on my desktop and found one called Camera Images. I could have done it even easier, I thought. I opened the folder and saw many subfolders, each with a woman's name. Marcel turned out to be meticulous and very organized. I took the USB flash drive from my key fob, inserted it into the open slot on the front of his computer, and copied the contents of that folder to the drive. Scrolling through the list, I froze when I saw a folder called Jude. Opening it, I saw that it was filled with photographs and video clips. I set the view mode to show large icons so I could see previews of all the files at a glance. Most of them were photographs of Jude in various stages of dress and undress, photographs of her in the girls' restroom looking at herself in the mirror, and even on the toilet. This bastard obviously put cameras in the locker room and restroom. Son of a bitch. I saw an icon of Jude sitting on the toilet and double-clicked it. It turned out to be a 3-minute video clip of her walking in, pulling down her pants and panties, sitting down, doing her thing, drying herself off, and putting her pants back on. He even recorded her washing her hands afterwards. My blood was boiling inside me. I didn't have time to review all the notes, so I had to put off analyzing these files until I got home. I closed the folder and quickly checked the contents of his desktop and hard drive. I didn't find anything interesting, so I opened the Camera Images folder again and quickly scrolled down. I found what I was looking for in the folder with a letter M. I opened a folder called Melissa. There were 10 times more files than in Jude's folder and a lot of videos. I scrolled and scrolled, then went back and sorted by date. The very first file was dated 2 weeks before her death. I double-clicked on it. The video began to play, showing an empty office. A few seconds later, Marcel appeared, followed by Melissa. They had sex. In all my years as a detective, this was the clearest clue I had ever come across. The only problem is I couldn't use it in court without a warrant. I exited the video and carefully closed the folders, leaving everything as it was. He pulled the flash drive out of the computer and prepared to put it back on the keychain, but instead shoved it deeper into his pocket. I didn't want to risk losing her. I looked around the rest of the table and the entire office, but found nothing else interesting. I had been in the office for about 10 minutes and knew it was time to get out of there. It was obvious that someone had broken into the premises when Marcel arrived to find the broken camera. I carefully locked the door and waited near the dumpster until the camera turned away again, then quickly crossed the parking lot and got into the car, heading home. On the way, I called Martinez. "I hope you have a good reason for calling me this early," he grumbled. "Have you solved the problem? Should we go to Pancho?" "No, but I may have evidence linking Marcel to at least one victim, and maybe several," I explained, driving into my driveway. "What evidence and how did you get it?" he asked. "Let's just say it can't be used in court, but if I can get a warrant, now I know where to look. This bastard hid cameras in the women's locker room and in the restroom. At least this way you can pin him down. We need to find enough grounds for a judge to sign a search warrant. Did you find out anything?" "Yes, good news. I went back and talked to Angela Chambers. You were right. She used to visit the Happy Life studio for several months. You know what? She said she had to leave because her boyfriend caught her having sex with your boyfriend, Slippery." "That's already 2 victims associated with Marseille," I said. "But that's not enough for a warrant. We need more. Go back and talk to each of the victims. Find out if they have had any contact with him or the studio. Also go to Marcel and interrogate him about Melissa. Ask him for a list of all clients for the last year. Tell him it's to look for possible suspects or something like that." "Understood. How's it going with Jude?" She took the news about Melissa very hard. Although they no longer spoke, they had been best friends for many years. She must be in pain. "Has she slept with him yet?" Martinez chuckled. "You know you're an asshole. I said without answering the question. I didn't tell him about the photographs I found. Yes, I know, he admitted. You said you never touched Melissa, Jude shouted to her yoga instructor. Where the hell did you find this? Marcel howled, pointing to a photo of him having sex with Melissa. His accent disappeared. Remember the break-in at your studio? I asked, grinning widely. You son of a bitch, he barked. You lied to me? Jude screamed, her face streaked with tears. Have you been lying all this time? I trusted you. She turned to me, her face wet with tears. I'm so sorry. I'm a fool. I posted a few more photos. They captured numerous acts between Marcel and Melissa. It looks like they've been having fun together for a long time. He seems to love taking pictures of all his connections. I saw everything, including the ones with you. With me? Jude screamed. But we had nothing. Jude, this isn't about you right now, I told her. We will deal with your mistakes later. Do you know who this woman is? I asked, showing another photo in which Marcel was with an unknown woman. It's Angie, Jude exclaimed. You slept with her too. I turned over a few other photos. The photographs again showed Marcel indulging in carnal pleasures with other women from the studio. Jude was shocked. Oh my God, did you sleep with all the women in the group? Am I the only one you haven't been able to get yet? Bye, I interjected. Isn't that why you came here? Jude couldn't answer. She looked like she was about to throw up. I turned the next photo over. It was Melissa again, but this time she was lying at the crime scene. It was clear that she was dead. Jude screamed. Martinez returned and re-interviewed all the victims. It turned out that 3 of them were regular clients of the Happy Life studio, and the other 2 attended free classes for beginners. So we had 6 victims that we could directly link to Marcel Boffles. This was enough to obtain the necessary warrants. We started planning how to conduct the search. During this time, one of our technicians began intercepting Marcel's calls and text messages. Over the next few days, I kept my eyes on Jude. Thanks to the GPS tracker, I always knew where she was. I had to stay close to the house to keep an eye on her, which meant I was neglecting my responsibilities in the case. Luckily, Martinez tried to cover me. He called when he had questions or needed my direction, but mostly he handled things on his own. I was determined to keep Jude away from the studio and away from Marcel. Being near him put her in danger. I had to come up with a lot of excuses and try to be home every time she was home. But this morning she made it clear that she will go to the studio, even if I don't want her to. I couldn't think of a plausible reason to dissuade her, so I decided to let her go and follow her. I pretended to be leaving for work, then parked at the end of the street and watched our house through binoculars. Not even a minute had passed before she left the house. I saw her load a duffel bag and a large bottle of water into the trunk, then get into the car and drive off. I let her drive away a little and followed her, watching the GPS signal. She headed straight to the mall and parked at the yoga studio. While I was waiting for her to come out, my work phone rang. It was Martinez. I answered sharply, expecting him to say something new on the matter. We were waiting for DNA results from the kit and the crime scene. Yes, I said into the phone, without taking my eyes off the entrance to the studio. Listen, you have a problem, Martinez said, clearly annoyed. Jimmy, our computer guy, intercepted a call from Marcel to your wife recently. They are going to meet at a hotel to sleep. You have to do something. You are sure? I asked, feeling my blood pressure rise and my pulse quicken. Yes, there is no doubt about it. Jude is supposed to meet him at the studio, and then they will go to the hotel together. You don't have much time. Thank you, I said, checking to see if my weapon was loaded. It was already a nervous habit. Of course it was loaded. It seems like I might need your cousin today. I was afraid you would say that, Martinez responded. But you have to control yourself, buddy. The captain has stood in my way more than once because of you. You know Jimmy's a good guy, but he's going to have to document calls from Marcel Jude. When this comes out, everyone will know that the chief investigator's wife slept with the main suspect in the murder case. When this gets out, your career is over. If you do something rash now, everyone will know that it was you. Just get Jude out of this situation and stay away. Don't mess it up. Crap. The fact that Captain Hayes was worried about me was alarming. Martinez was right. Jimmy had no choice but to report Marcel's call to my wife and their agreement to meet for sex. When Hayes finds out, he'll at least remove me from the case. This, of course, made adjustments to my plans. If I took the law into my own hands, everyone would know that I did it. There seemed to be no way out. Are we sure it's him? I asked, looking for confirmation. You know as much as I do, Martinez responded. He fits the description of the crimes. We're pretty sure he killed Melissa. Let's just say I wouldn't want that bastard anywhere near my wife. Eddie, I said, using his real name, which I didn't usually do. No matter what happens, stay clean. You don't know anything, understand? Damn it, what are you doing? He asked. I need to go. I have to do this. You were a good teammate. Bill, don't do anything stupid. He didn't have time to finish, so I hung up, turned off the phone. A second later, my personal phone rang. It was Martinez again. I turned it off too. I didn't want to be interrupted, and if things went badly, I didn't want my phones to be pinged from extra towers. Then the studio door opened. Jude and Marcel walked out together and got into her car. Jude saw the photo. It took a few seconds for her mind to comprehend what she had seen. Suddenly, her eyes opened wide. She covered her mouth with her hand and screamed. Marcel jumped up and tried to run away, but I pointed the gun at him. Give me a reason, bastard. Give me at least one reason to pull the trigger. Behind me, I heard a woman scream. I turned around and saw the waitress looking at me with her eyes widened in horror, staring at the weapon. I picked up the badge. I'm a cop, I shouted. The waitress backed away slowly, then turned and ran into the kitchen. Damn, I didn't have much time left. She's probably already called the police, and in about 8 minutes this place will be full of cops. Bill, what are you doing? My wife screamed. He killed her, I said. He slept with Melissa, and then he killed her. Marcel raised his hands. What? He exhaled, trying to move away from me. No, man, I didn't kill her. I swear, she was alive when I left. Your DNA is still on her, slippery. You'll get a lethal injection for this. We just met for sex, man, honestly. We met every week to have sex. Why should I kill her? She was a great match. You are the wrong person. Marcel Bauphils, you are under arrest. I twisted his arm behind his back and forcefully snapped the handcuffs onto his wrist. Whatever you say. Okay, never mind. Bill, what are you doing? There was confusion in Jude's voice. She looked scared and depressed. Stay here and don't interfere, I told her. Marcel and I will go out of town for a little walk. No, Bill, she screamed. You can't do this. He's not worth it. There was nothing between us. I love you, Bill. Don't ruin your life for this bastard. Stay here, I barked. Please, I didn't kill her, he shouted. I felt the smell of urine hit my nose as a large wet spot appeared on his pants. I just liked having sex with married women. I didn't touch anyone. I couldn't hurt anyone. Get up, I demanded, tugging at his handcuffs. He staggered and moved forward uncertainty as I pushed him towards the exit. Behind us, the door opened again, and Jude came out screaming my name. She was holding the phone in her hand. Bill, stop. It's your partner calling, Martinez. I stopped and looked at my wife. She handed me the phone. He says it's urgent. I stared at her, seething with anger, my heart pounding. I held Marcel by the handcuffs with one hand and reached for the phone with the other. Talk quickly, I said into the phone. What the hell? I'm calling you nonstop. Martinez's voice rang out. I'm a little busy, Martinez, I began, interrupting him. It's not him, Martinez shouted. What? I couldn't believe my ears. DNA. It's his DNA in the kit, but buddy, he didn't kill her. There's a lot of other DNA on her body and in her license plate. The one who killed her was not Bauphils. You're talking nonsense, I barked back. You just don't want me to kill that bastard. No, I swear, buddy. Additionally, the DNA in the kit does not match the samples we received from the other two crimes. It's not him, Bill. Bill! Jude screamed. I looked up. Everything happened in slow motion. She was looking somewhere behind me. I turned around when the first shot rang out. I continued my turn, instinctively reaching for my weapon. Another shot rang out. I saw the shooter. Dave. There was a shootout. Dave and Slippery died. Bill! I heard Jude calling me. You're wounded. She ran up to me and threw herself on my chest as I sank onto my back. I looked up at the blue Texas sky before it disappeared behind the face of the only woman I had ever loved. She was crying. No, Bill, she screamed. Don't leave me. I looked at her face and smiled until everything slowly went dark. I wanted to sleep, but a loud sound kept ringing in my head, preventing me from remaining in this state of oblivion. It was some kind of piercing signal that echoed in my ears. For a moment, I felt like someone was calling me on my phone endlessly. I opened my eyes. Jude was nearby. Turn off that damn signal, I croaked through dry lips. The sound that came out of me was more like a rustling sound than words. Bill, Jude sighed and hugged me tighter. I felt her hands, and looking down, I saw her kissing my hand, her tears flowing non-stop. Oh, Bill, you're awake. I nodded slightly. At that moment, people crowded around the bed and started checking me. I tried to brush them off, but I couldn't find the strength to even raise my hand. I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them again, the room was dark. Everyone left except Jude. She was sitting next to the bed, her head resting on my hand. I moved, and she woke up, looking at me with concern. I tried to speak, but realized that there were tubes sticking out of my nose and mouth. I raised my left hand and tried to pull them out. No, Bill, stop, Jude exclaimed. You need to leave them where they are. I looked at her and remembered what she did. I felt tears running down my cheeks. Jude betrayed me with that slippery one. She was the last person I wanted to see. I jerked the tubes sharply and pulled them out of my mouth and nose. Jude tried to stop me, but it was too late. When I freed myself from them, I tried to speak, but my voice was weak and she did not understand me. I took a deep breath and repeated, "Get out of here, you woman of easy virtue." I hissed, and the monitor signals immediately screeched. Bill, I love you. I'm sorry, she screamed. I shook my head sharply, and a nurse and several other employees rushed into the room. Treasonous, trashy, I shouted as the staff held me down and inserted the tubes back into place. I lost consciousness again. When I woke up again, my children and Jude were nearby. They slept cuddled on a sofa nearby. I dozed off again and woke up to hear someone talking. I won't be able to live if he dies thinking that I cheated on him, the woman said. Didn't you change it? Said a male voice with a Texas accent. No, I still haven't made up my mind, the woman answered, insisting on her innocence. I went to the hotel with Marcel, intending to do this, but at the last moment I changed my mind. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Marcel was persistent, tried to persuade, and I even succumbed to temptation. But now I'm glad I didn't do it. I can't believe how I fell for it. Then why did Bill think you did it? Martinez asked. He saw some photographs or videos that Marcel took when we were in his office. I don't know how these pictures came about, but Bill was convinced that I was cheating with Marcel. So you slept with him? Martinez insisted. No, she whispered. I don't know how Marcel took such photographs. He probably had hidden cameras. But everything was taken out of context. Martinez laughed. Well, I think it looked pretty convincing, he remarked. Marcel kissed me. I didn't answer him. Every time he did this, I pushed him away and told him to stop. But this is not visible in the photographs. All you can see is how we kiss, or so it seems. But I swear on the lives of my children, we never had anything. Do you understand that he will never believe you? Martinez said. Honestly, I don't believe you myself, although I'm not your husband. But it's true, Jude insisted. Well, sometimes a lie is easier to believe than the truth, he said. Are you suggesting that I lie to Bill? She asked. Something like that, he replied. I can't do this, she said. I'd rather tell him the truth, even if he never forgives me. I just pray he makes it through. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life doing whatever he says, as long as he lets me stay by his side. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital, then was transferred to a rehabilitation center, where I spent another 3 months before I was allowed to return home. Jude was with me every day, even though I told her to leave every day. I am your wife, she declared. My place is next to you. I'm not going anywhere. I wasn't thrilled, but I knew I needed her help. Doubled over in pain, I told her, just so you know, the day I can stand on my own, I will file for divorce. My words reached their goal. Jude took a deep breath and struggled to contain her response. I noticed how tears began to well up in her eyes, but she just nodded quietly. I understand, she replied softly. I'll do whatever it takes to help you get back on your feet. I was determined to divorce her. For me, she made her choice. I didn't want to be second best to anyone, especially someone like that bastard. I'm not a cuckold. But I realized that it might be a long time before I could walk on my own again. I got shot twice. I was partially paralyzed, and the doctor said the chances of me ever walking again were slim. Well, what do doctors even know? After the shooting, a lot became clearer. First of all, if I had not been injured so seriously, I would probably have been fired. I completely screwed up the investigation and allowed my personal feelings to completely cloud my judgment. If Dave hadn't intervened, I would have done a lot more stupid things. But fate decreed otherwise, and in the end, I was able to retire as a hero. Secondly, it turned out that Marcel Boffles did not kill anyone. He didn't need it, he already had plenty of women. He also didn't lie about his relationship with Melissa. They met every week for sex for several months. Dave found out about her meetings with Marcel and gave her a debriefing. Melissa was in love with Slippery and wanted to leave Dave to be with the creep. But Marcel rejected her and told her to stay away. However, this did not stop their weekly affairs. Apparently, Dave followed her to the hotel, waited until Marcel left, and then knocked on the door. She must have thought it was Marcel who had returned. Dave burst into the room and killed her in a fit of rage. But killing his wife was not enough for him. Dave also wanted to kill Marcel. It looks like he followed Jude and Marcel from the yoga studio to the hotel. If I had been more attentive, I might have noticed him. Dave waited outside, watching. When I brought Marcel out in handcuffs, it wasn't a real capture. I had my own plans for this bastard, but Dave beat me to it. Finally, Martinez used a genealogy website to trace the DNA of the real serial offender. It turned out that he was just a madman who will now sit behind bars for the rest of his life. About 2 weeks after I returned home, Martinez stopped by to check on me. Things were going hard. Jude did her best to look after me, but I refused to engage in rehabilitation and physical therapy, and as a result, my condition did not improve. I lost all motivation to get better or walk again. The thought of Jude and that scoundrel disgusted me. I was literally sickened by what she did, and even more so by what she was going to do the day he was killed and I became disabled. What kind of life can I have now? Nobody cares whether I'm alive or dead. It would have been a lot easier for everyone if Dave had killed me along with Slippery. I also remembered Jude and Martinez's conversation at the hospital. He was right. I didn't believe her. Strangely, Jude never mentioned Marcel, and I also avoided the topic. It was all like an elephant in the room, but none of us wanted to bring it up for fear of provoking something even worse. All I could do was wait for Eduardo to become the mouse that would sooner or later frighten the elephant in my room. You know, she swears she didn't cheat on you, he told me as Jude went into the kitchen to get some tea. Yes, I know, I replied. I heard your conversation when you thought I was unconscious. Did you hear the whole conversation? I think yes. And you don't believe her? No, I don't believe it. And you will never forgive her, right? No. Okay, then you need to watch this. Martinez took out his phone and turned on the video. I immediately recognized that it was from Slippery's collection. The recording showed Jude talking to Marcel in his office about a trip to Costa Rica. Suddenly, he grabbed her and kissed her, just like I saw in the photographs. But Jude slapped him and told him never to do that again. Everything happened exactly as she said. He played another clip. This one was longer. She was telling the truth. Everything happened exactly as she described. Damn it. It's good that Slippery was already dead. Otherwise, I would have killed him myself. I sat silently and cried until the muscles in my stomach cramped from tension. The next day, I asked Jude to take me to rehab. It was difficult. I fought to restore the connection between nerves and muscles. But now I had a goal. I decided to fight to the end. 2 years later, Jude held my hands as I struggled to my feet. She stood in front of me with a smile, then took a step back. I tensed up and, with effort, raising my right leg, took the first step, shifted his weight to it, and slowly lifted his left leg, moved it forward, and lowered it to the floor again. "That's it, honey," Jude encouraged me. "You can do it." She let go of my hands and took a step back again. I nodded and tried my best. For the first time after being wounded, I walked slowly, step by step. I stopped, looked at my wife, and smiled. Until that moment, I doubted that I would ever be able to walk again, but now I knew that I could do it. It was just a matter of time, hard work, and patience. At that moment, I forgot about Slippery and the pain he brought into my life. I forgot about Jude's near betrayal. I forgot that the day I was shot, I planned to take Marcel Boffils out of town, put 2 bullets in his head, and die. Me and Jude looked into each other's eyes. We both cried. "So," she began, wiping away tears, "you took your first step without outside help. I'm proud of you. I think now you want a divorce." I myself forgot what I told her then. I slowly shook my head from side to side. "No," I said, and tears streamed down my cheeks. "But isn't that why you tried so hard to learn to walk again?" she asked, a little confused. "No," I answered again. "I trained so hard so we could walk down the aisle together again. If you agree to marry me again." I held out my hands to her, and she stepped towards me, taking my hands again. I slowly knelt down, barely able to maintain my balance, and held her hands. "Jude, I believe you. I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much I love you. Will you marry me again?" "Yes," she screamed, and then rushed towards me, knocking me off my feet, and showered me with kisses. I hugged her and kissed her tightly, tenderly, passionately. She seemed to melt in my arms. We started a new life. Jude was able to put all her yoga skills into practice, and I became her devoted student. If she could teach a half-broken cripple, she could work wonders with others. In fact, she was so good that we decided to invest some of the money I received from the city after my injury to open our own studio, Happy Wife. But first we had to go to Costa Rica so Jude could get her instructor certification. Jude will become a yogi. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.